"You were uninvited yesterday," she said, smiling sweetly into the microphone like it was a toast. The music stopped. Forks clinked against wine glasses. Every face in the reception hall turned toward me, some amused, others wide-eyed, a few already looking away in pity. I stood still, one hand clutching the bouquet I'd paid $800 for, the other trembling just enough for me to notice. Jessica didn't blink. Her champagne dress shimmered under the chandelier, her voice syrupy and cruel in equal measure. We just wanted today to be about love, about peace. I looked at Everett, my son. He didn't meet my eyes. His jaw clenched and his hands stayed neatly folded in front of him as if he were praying the ground might swallow us both. I had no place at the head table. I wasn't even at a guest table. They'd placed me near the speaker system, too far to be seen, but close enough to hear every word. I'd brought my own coffee from the hotel downstairs, not that anyone noticed. I glanced at the place settings. Crystal glasses I'd chosen. Linen napkins I'd paid extra to have custom pressed. Each centerpiece, my idea, my florist. $43,000 of my savings poured into this wedding, and I had just been dismissed like an afterthought. My mouth didn't move, not yet. Instead, I stepped forward. Slowly, quietly. I laid the bouquet on the table right beside Jessica's untouched dessert plate. She flinched just a flicker, and I leaned in. "I'm leaving," I said, calm as Sunday morning. "But before I go, I'd love to introduce you to someone." Her brow twitched. I turned toward the entrance. Just past the double doors, waiting exactly where we'd agreed, stood a man in a dark suit. His eyes locked with mine, and he gave the smallest nod. Jessica followed my gaze. And when she saw him, the color drained from her face before her knees buckled, and she hit the floor. She cried the first time we met. Not dramatically, just a soft, fluttery kind of weeping, the kind meant to be noticed, but not questioned. Everett had brought her over for dinner unannounced, with that nervous pride that made me set aside my irritation and pull an extra plate from the cabinet. Jessica sat in my kitchen, eyes wide and grateful, cradling the cup of coffee I offered like it was a lifeline. She told me about growing up without a mother, her father gone before high school. She'd been on her own since 17, working her way through nursing school with nothing but grit and faith. I believed her. Of course I did. I wanted to. That night after they left, I wrapped up the leftovers and stared at the plate she hadn't touched. There was something about the way she spoke, like each word had been rehearsed. But Everett looked the happiest I'd seen him since his father's funeral. He laughed more when she was around. He'd started sleeping again. He was alive again. So I shut my mouth. When they got engaged, I offered her my mother's sapphire pin. It had passed through 3 generations of Quillen women. Jessica gasped like I'd handed her the moon. "You're the mother I never had," she whispered. I gave her the family jeweler's number. I wired money for the deposit on the venue. I mailed a check for the dress, $12,000, 3 fittings, 2 redesigns. I took her calls at 11 p.m. when she was stressed about floral arrangements. I called her honey sweetheart. I defended her when Everett's friends called her distant. I let myself love her. And when something felt off, when she claimed her nursing job paid in cash, when her stories about her past changed slightly, each time I told myself love isn't perfect. I'd already seen my son grieve one woman he adored. I wasn't about to take another one away. Then one night, she left her phone charging on the kitchen counter. I was reaching for a dish towel when the screen lit up. Marcus R. I said no more delays. You promised me access. The name stayed with me all night. Marcus R. She'd seen me glance at the screen. I'd played it off, pretended I hadn't noticed. She smiled like always and offered to refill my coffee. But her hands were trembling, and she left the room faster than usual. That's when I knew. The next morning, while Everett was at work and Jessica was running errands, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and a familiar tightness in my chest. I typed Marcus R. Jessica and hit search. Dozens of nothing. Then I added Tennessee. That's when it came up. Small Claims Court, Nashville. 2 years ago. Plaintiff Marcus Rivera. Defendant Jessica Laney, not Miller. Laney. I clicked the PDF. The summary was short, but it didn't need to be long. Marcus accused her of withdrawing $17,000 from their joint account without permission, then disappearing. The money was meant for a catering deposit for their wedding. She'd moved out 2 days later, left no forwarding address. He'd filed suit. She never appeared. Judgment was entered against her by default. No response, no payment, no trace. I read it 3 times. Then I searched her name again. Jessica Laney this time, and dug deeper. DMV records, real estate transfers, marriage certificates. That's how I found the divorce filing. Her first marriage had ended 4 years ago. He cited abandonment. Jessica had stood in my home in front of Everett and claimed she'd never been married, that her last relationship ended in college. She'd told me her ex-boyfriend had died in a car accident, that she'd grieved for years. I didn't know what Marcus would say if I called him. I didn't know what he'd become, but I knew I needed to hear his voice. I wrote his name, the case number, and the court address on a notepad and folded it into my wallet. Then I picked up my phone and dialed directory assistance for Nashville. Marcus Rivera Construction, the woman said. Hold, please. A moment later, a tired male voice picked up. This is Marcus. There was a pause on the line after I said her name. Jessica Laney, I repeated. Or maybe you knew her as Sarah, or whatever she told you. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was low and level. She's not dead, he asked. No, I said. She's very much alive, and she's getting married next Saturday. To my son. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was processing. Then came a breath long and sharp. She disappeared with $17,000 a rental car contract in my name and a diamond ring I hadn't finished paying off. I filed the suit out of anger, not because I thought I'd see her again. She said you were dead. That tracks. So who's the new victim? My son. His name is Everett. He's kind, steady, works in IT. Not the kind of man you'd expect to be targeted, but I guess none of us are until we are. Marcus let out something between a scoff and a sigh. She always picked men who were emotionally raw. I'd just lost my sister when I met her. I thought the universe sent her. She told us she had no family, I said. Of course she did. I told him everything, the cash, the lies, the pearls, the way she watched Everett when he wasn't looking, the constant talk of sacrifice, of starting over. She's dangerous, I finished. Yeah, he said quietly, but not smart. She used her real voice on the phone with me. Left enough of a trail. I need your help, I figured. There was another pause. I want her to see me, he said. Not in court, not in private. I want her to look me in the eye when everything unravels. Then come to Savannah, I said. I'll get you into the wedding. No drama, only the necessary kind. We exchanged numbers and agreed on a signal. He'd arrive that morning. Stay out of sight until I gave the word. I ended the call, walked to the fridge, and stared at the magnet that held my hair appointment card. Then I took it down, and the next morning, I started calling the vendors. The first call was to the Belridge estate. I'd spent weeks working with their coordinator, choosing table layouts, floral arcs, linen textures no one would ever notice. Her voice lit up when she heard mine. Mrs. Quillen, we're just finalizing the chair placement. Are you excited? I forced a soft laugh. Actually, there's been a little change. The bride's family has decided to take care of the remaining payments. It's important to them, you know, symbolic. I think it's lovely. Oh, that's unexpected, but of course. Should I send the invoice to them directly? Yes, please. I gave her the number Jessica had once used to register for a sweepstakes one. She never answered, one I'd seen her delete messages from without blinking. They prefer handling things directly. Very traditional. Noted, the coordinator chirped. Thank you so much for letting us know. I hung up and made the second call to the florist. Then the caterer. Then the string quartet I'd begged Everett to include because live music makes a moment feel real. Each conversation followed the same script, a warm tone, a graceful excuse, and that same fake number. I didn't tremble. I didn't cry. I just listened for the tiny clicks at the end of each call and breathed a little easier with each one. Upstairs, I opened the garment bag hanging on the closet door. The dress inside had been altered 3 times. Dusty rose silk, hand-stitched sleeves neckline softened to flatter my shoulders. I ran my hand down the fabric, once then zipped the bag shut. I tucked it behind the winter coats. Instead, I pulled out the simple black sheath I'd worn to Everett's college graduation dinner. It fit. Not beautifully, but it would do. Quiet, clean, unmemorable. From the back of the jewelry drawer, I found my mother's pearl ring. Not expensive, just real. She'd worn it when she buried my father. I wore it when I gave birth to Everett, and I would wear it now when I stepped out of the picture I'd helped frame. In 2 days, they'd walk into that wedding without knowing the walls were already shaking. I called her first, not Everett, not the venue, her. Jessica answered after 4 rings, her voice light and breathy, like she was already playing the bride. "Mrs. Arlen," she said. "Everything okay?" I took a breath. "I wanted to speak with you. Just us." A pause. Then, "Of course." "There's something I need to ask," I said, careful to keep my voice neutral. "Before the wedding. Before everything becomes permanent. Is there anything you haven't told my son or me?" She laughed soft and practiced. "Like what you tell me," I said. "I'm giving you one chance to be honest. About your past. About anything that might later be harder to forgive." Her tone changed. Subtle, but sharp. "I don't know what you're implying, but I've been nothing but honest. I've seen things," I said quietly. "Names, numbers, a lawsuit in Tennessee." The silence on the other end of the line deepened. Then, "You need to let it go." "That's not an answer," Jessica exhaled. "You're not coming to the wedding." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. "For everyone's sake," she added. "Don't show up tomorrow. You'll only ruin it for Everett. This is his day, not yours." I nodded to myself, even though she couldn't see me. Understood. And then I hung up. I didn't cry this time. Not yet. I hadn't planned to stand. Not when they sat me near the speaker. Not when the champagne toast started. Not even when Jessica leaned toward the mic like it was her throne. "You were uninvited yesterday," she said, her voice spun sugar with a blade inside. People froze. Some looked confused. Others exchanged glances, wondering if it was a joke. It wasn't. Jessica smiled as if I were nothing but a misplaced napkin in a room she now owned. I didn't flinch. Not when Everett lowered his gaze. Not when the server beside me tried to step back quietly, as if I might explode. I stood. No one stopped me. I walked slowly toward the front of the room, past the white roses I'd paid to import, past the caterer nervously refilling glasses, past my son, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Jessica stiffened as I neared. I set the bouquet down beside her dessert, $800 of hydrangeas and freesia. She barely glanced at it. "I'm leaving," I said softly. But the room heard it. "But before I go, I'd like to introduce you to someone." Her expression shifted. I turned to the double doors, and just as we planned, Marcus stepped into view. A dark suit. A calm face. 2 years of silence turned into certainty. Jessica's breath caught. Her smile cracked. She reached for the edge of the table, but her fingers missed it. Her knees buckled. Gasps rippled through the crowd as she hit the floor. Marcus didn't pause. He walked forward like a man walking into court, slow and sure. Jessica Miller isn't who she says she is, he said. Her name is Sarah Collins. She scammed me out of $17,000 and disappeared, and I have proof. He reached into his jacket. People pulled out their phones. Everett rose, confused. Jessica tried to speak, but no words came. And I took my seat again beside the speaker, the one place no one thought the story would begin. But it had, and the ending was about to write itself. Sarah Collins. Marcus repeated louder this time, or Jessica Laney, or whatever name you're pretending with today. Gasps fluttered through the chapel like falling leaves. Jessica didn't move. Everett turned slowly, his brows pulling tight. "Do you know him?" he asked. She shook her head too fast. "He's mistaken. I don't know who." Marcus raised a yellow folder above his head. "Court records from Nashville," he said. "Filed under Marcus Rivera vs. Jessica Laney. Fraud. $17,000 stolen from our shared account. No show at court." Judgment entered against her. He opened the folder and pulled out a photo. Jessica standing on a balcony with a drink in one hand and Marcus's hand in the other. This was 3 weeks before she disappeared. Her voice cracked. "Photos can be faked. Anyone can file a claim Marcus cut her off. Receipts from the rental car in my name. The hotel room she charged to my card. The signature she forged. I've got a timeline, a witness." And he added, pulling out his phone, "I've got the messages." Everett stepped forward, his voice sharp now. "That's enough." Jessica turned to him, desperate. "He's obsessed, Everett. He followed me for months. He's trying to ruin this." Everett raised a hand to stop her. "Let him finish," Marcus scrolled. "Here's one from 6 weeks ago sent to her accomplice. That old bat's throwing money at me. I'll wear her dumb heirloom and sell it after the honeymoon." Silence fell like a curtain. Jessica's mouth opened, but no words came. Her face paled, her grip loosening on the bouquet. The pin, my sapphire pin, glinted at her collarbone like a spotlight on the lie. Everett looked at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. And then I stepped forward. Jessica turned slowly, and when her eyes met mine, all the color drained from her face. "You," she whispered, backing up a step. "You set this up." I looked at her, then at my son, and said, "No, I just stopped pretending." Everett stared at me stunned and took one breath too many before whispering, "Mom." Jessica dropped the bouquet. It hit the floor with a hollow thud, petals scattering like ash. Her hands trembled at her sides, the pin still gleaming against her collarbone as if mocking her. "I didn't mean," she stammered. "Everett, it wasn't like that." He twisted everything. "You know me. You know me." Everett didn't answer. He stood in place, shoulders, stiff eyes glazed, like someone watching a car crash they couldn't stop. I took a step toward him, but stopped myself. He needed to come to me on his own. And he did. Slowly, deliberately, he walked away from the altar and toward where I stood, just left of the center aisle. When he reached me, he didn't say anything at first, just looked at me with the face I remembered from his childhood, open, wounded, unsure. Then his hands reached up to her collarbone. Gently, with a touch I'd taught him to use, he unfastened the sapphire pin. The same one I'd handed over with hope in my chest and tears in my throat. He pressed it into my palm. "This belongs to someone who actually loves me." I held his gaze. Neither of us blinked. We moved to the back pew together. The guests didn't know whether to stand or sit, so most of them just shifted uncomfortably, whispering into their hands. At the front, Jessica was crumbling. No more lies, no more charm, just frantic words tossed into the air like confetti no one wanted. "Please, Everett, please don't let her do this. I can fix it. We can fix it. You can't believe him over me." He didn't answer. That's when the 2 men in suits entered through the main doors. Clean-cut, clipped voices, badges drawn before anyone could react. Jessica Laney, the taller one, asked. She froze. Her head whipped toward Marcus. He didn't gloat. He just watched. "Ma'am, we'd like to ask you a few questions about several inconsistencies in your employment history and recent bank activity." She tried to run. She didn't get far. By the time they reached her, she was sobbing. Not for Everett, for herself. And as they guided her toward the exit, Everett leaned toward me. "I should have believed you from the beginning." The ballroom had already been set. The tables were lit. The wine uncorked. The band had begun playing something slow and apologetic. The cake stood untouched under soft lighting, its sugar roses still perfect, unaware of everything that had unraveled just 30 minutes before. But the ceremony was over, or rather, undone. Still, people stayed. They ate, they drank, they whispered. Some avoided me entirely. Others offered awkward smiles or quiet nods of solidarity. One woman, Jessica's college roommate, I think hugged me like I'd just saved her life. Maybe I had. Everett stood beside me the whole time, silent for most of it, like he was still trying to fit the pieces back together. And when the room quieted enough, when the first round of wine glasses had been poured, he stepped forward and raised his. "I don't know what this was supposed to be anymore," he said. "But I do know one thing." He turned toward me, to my mother, the only woman in this room who never lied to me. There was a pause. Then the sound of glasses clinking filled the room. A few people clapped. Most just looked down, ashamed they hadn't seen it sooner. Everett didn't move from my side. But I needed air. I stepped outside and let the heavy wooden doors close behind me. The late afternoon light had softened. The breeze smelled like summer and salt, and it lifted the hem of my dress just enough to remind me I was still standing. The archway we'd spent hours designing the floral centerpiece of the ceremony was wilting. The roses had started to fall, drifting across the lawn like feathers from a broken pillow. I watched as the wind nudged one petal after another off the frame until it looked less like a wedding and more like a forgotten shrine. I stood there, breathing, watching, letting the moment settle. Inside, they were still toasting, still murmuring. But out here, I wasn't the mother of the groom or the woman who'd paid the bill. I was just Ilaria. And for the first time in months, that felt like enough.